Hey, AP Psych. Good afternoon. It is Monday, April 6th. And we're continuing on with personality, chapter 15. So, everyone who joins us today, make sure you do one thing, that you go back and check all the grades that I entered for chapter 4. No critique, just to make sure that that I didn't forget anything. Again, I had over 200 some odd emails this weekend that I went through and graded. So, but very possible that I could have missed a grade or missed entering them. Actually, last night when I was going back through it, there were some that I missed that I knew that I had graded. I knew that I had seen, but they still weren't in the grade book. So do me a favor and make sure you go through and look through PowerSchool. Just check your grade and make sure you have a grade for everything that you turned in. Again, I am completely able and at fault there, but I am possibly able to make a mistake there and forget something. So check PowerSchool, make sure your grade is good and that everything you turned in got graded, because I should be at the end of today all caught up. So if it's not in there by the end of the day, then I missed it, or I haven't. I just need to go back and look at it again. So okay, but good job, everybody. I mean, by far, wow, I was very impressed with the amount of work and attention and detail. It was very good. Also, bless you to those who sent it to me all in one email. Appreciate that. By the end of the weekend, I was very thankful for those emails. So I think next time we might do that. Just send it to me all in one. You don't have to. It just makes it easier. Okay. All right. If you want to get at your chapter 15 lab, I think this is personality test number 5. And this is going to be on your on Canvas. I keep switching them around based on our schedule, but this is going to be a humanistic trait test. So I wanted to give this one today because it introduced the trait theory, which we're going to be talking about today. Also, just a kind of disclaimer with this personality test. This test is either very accurate or it is very inaccurate. So there's no gray in this test. It's either very, very accurate and precise, or it's not. So I'm always interested to see how this one comes out. It is humanistic in nature. So you're going to have to rate, and you're going to be timed. And then I have the traits that you're going to rate. So get out a course folder or your lab for chapter 15, and go ahead and number 1 to 15. You do not need to skip spaces. You're just going to write down a trait that I'm going to give you here. So just number 1 to 15. Okay, and then what I have listed here is 15 traits, and I'll hold the laptop up so you can get it, and I'll hold it up there for a minute so you can write all these down. So just write these down somewhere off to the side, and then what's going to happen is when I say go, you've got 2 minutes to move these 15 traits into your 1 to 15 slots. 1 being the trait that best describes you, to 15 being the trait that least describes you. Okay. All right. So I have a number 1 to 15, and then you're just going to write these down somewhere, because I'll hold them up there time enough for you to get them written down, but then I'll remove them for the test. Okay. And I will go over these. Okay. So we have, and you can write these down in any order. We have punctual, organized, serious, reliable, planner, loyal, competitive, flexible, social, peacemaker, personable, understanding, easygoing, caring, and spontaneous. Okay. So again, if you're just joining us, just write down these 15 traits somewhere. You're gonna have to rate them in just a second. Okay. So reliable just means that you can be counted on. Planner would be, again, somebody that likes to have plans, doesn't like to be spontaneous. Likes to have the future kind of laid out. Flexible would just mean that you're easygoing, kind of the same thing down there. You are open to new things. You can change plans, change ideas, directions. And then personable, most questions about that one this morning. Personable is basically you're very social, very good with people. You're a good conversation starter, good at meeting new people, so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, so again, just write down these 15 traits. I'll give you a few more minutes to write them down. And again, if I go too fast here, then you can just obviously rewatch the video and get the traits down. And they're just the ones in the red. All right, and again, so what you're going to do is you're going to rate these, rank them actually. Okay. All right, so now you've got a list of your 15 terms, and you've got 1 through 15. Okay, I'll set the timer. Now, according to humanistic theory, you're going to have 2 minutes to rate or rank these 15 traits, 1 to 15. 1 being the most descriptive of you, the most accurate, 15 being the least. Okay? All right, you ready? And go. And again, you can cross out, erase, whatever you need to do. You just need to do it in 2 minutes.
Force will be with you, always.
Okay, got 1 minute, 1 minute left. You have 30 seconds. Ten seconds. Okay, and stop. Okay. All right, so again, with every humanistic personality test, there's always a level or element of self-concept and self-efficacy. So the ease that would rank these traits would help identify how strong your self-concept is, the understanding of who I am, and also my self-efficacy, understanding of good, bad, positive, negatives. Okay, so if you really struggle with the list, your self-concept is still developing quite a bit. But if you're able to quickly maneuver, get things over and get them ranked, then it's an indication that you have a pretty strong self-confident or self-concept and understanding of self-efficacy. So that those 2 elements are in every humanistic personality test. Okay. Now we'll kind of start this now and we'll end it up when we're done. You have 3 separate parts that you've listed. So draw a line after number 5. So 1 through 5 are one analysis. 6 through 10 are another analysis, so draw a line after 10, and then 11 through 15. So you've got 3 actual parts that represent 3 different aspects of your personality. Okay. Now I'll tell you what they mean. And then once we go through the trait theory, you'll understand it a little bit better. And this will also help you fill out the second part to all the personality tests you've taken, which is, are they measuring core or surface traits? Okay. All right. The first group, 1 through 5, if you want to put a little bracket on that, that is measuring your surface traits. Okay. Surface traits. So number 1 to 5 are your surface traits. Right here. Okay. 6 to 10 are your core traits, your source traits. And then 11 to 15 are what we call your actualizing traits, developing traits, what you kind of value in others, or you value when you look at the future as a part of your self-concept, but what are developing in you. So they haven't been actualized yet. So you don't consider them a part of your personality yet, but they hopefully will be. Okay. So you got surface, source, and actualizing traits. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to this once we've done talking about this. So theory number 4. Okay. So we've done psychoanalytic, psychodynamic. Okay. We've done humanistic, behavioristic, and now we're doing trait. Okay. Which starts on page 613 and goes to 622. Now, trait theory, it's very important to identify and know a switch here in paradigm a little bit. So trait theorists do not attempt to explain where our personality comes from. All right, so this is different than any other theory that we've covered so far, and it will be different from the one remaining theory we have left. Okay, trait theorists do not try to explain where our personality comes from. Their goal is to measure and describe personality. Okay, so they don't really believe that it really matters where it comes from. They just want to be able to accurately describe and assess a personality profile or somebody's personality traits. Okay, that's what they want to do. So they spend all their time in research and studying with that in game in mind. Okay, that's their goal. Okay, describe and identify traits, measure them. Okay, that's the goal of the trait theorists. All right. Again, don't care where it comes from. Doesn't care if it's unconscious, if it's from the environment, if it's nature, nurture, they don't care. They just want to be able to accurately measure your personality. Okay? Come up with the best tool to do that. Now, what they do try to do is only measure core traits or source traits. Okay? Which are the core dimension of our personality. Most people believe that they are genetic. They're biological, so they'd be nature. And there's really not that many of them, okay? And they need to be universal so that I can identify them in anybody, okay? So an example would be the Myers-Briggs type indicator, so the MBTI, which is the 16 personality types. You get an E or an I, you get an S or an N, you get a T or an F, or you get a J or a P, okay? Okay, so you get 4. Now there are 8 core traits, right? So they believe that those are universally found in everybody, and you have a dimension of those. So if we go to extrovert, introvert, which everybody in trait theory agrees that those are core traits. The E and the I are core. You're going to see those in just about every test. So everybody's either a degree of an extrovert or a degree of an introvert. Okay. Now they do not agree that there's an ambivert. Okay. So they basically everybody, like you might be a very low extrovert, but you're still an extrovert. You might be a low introvert, but you're still an introvert. Okay, so they kind of put people on these scales. But if you notice, you're only going to get 4 traits that describe your personality. Those are the core traits, the source traits. Then, based on that personality profile, you can have a whole bunch of surface traits that kind of sprout off of that, if you will. Okay, now my surface traits are the ones that are impacted by the environment, and those can change depending on the situation. So just like we talked about, your personality can change, whether you're at work, whether you're at school, whether you're with your family, whether you're with people that you know or people that you don't know. Those are your surface traits that change. Okay, we believe that your core, your source traits don't change. Okay, but your surface traits can change. So while there's only a few of these, and tomorrow I'm going to give you the test that has the fewest, that believes that there's only 2 core traits. Okay, everybody has dimensions of these 2 traits, which then lead to a whole bunch of surface traits. Okay. So we're going to use anywhere from 2 to 5, 8 core traits. And then here we have hundreds of surface traits that kind of stem off of that. So for example, extrovert would be a core source trait. From extrovert, I could get social, personable, okay? All right, so those would be two surface traits that stem from the core source trait of extrovert, okay? If I'm introverted, I could get a little more serious, more of a planner, possibly, okay? There's actually a more extroverted trait, peacemaker, okay? So, that's kind of what we're looking at, the differences. Now, in trait theory, again, they try to identify the core and source traits, right? There are a lot of tests, and most of the tests that we've taken so far, and the ones that are very fun, are surface traits, okay? They're just gonna measure surface traits. Now, a really good one that I just saw that if you notice on the lab, you get to choose your last one that you get to take. And if you follow social media and the news, you're gonna see that there's a personality test that's really gaining momentum. It's becoming very, very popular. It is the character personality test, or TV character personality test match. And it's a statistical personality test created in 2020. And which what's going to do, it had like 121 questions. It's going to take all the dimensions of your personality. It's going to match it with a fictional TV or movie character. So it's going to tell you like you're 70% a match for this character, 20% for this character, so on and so forth. So it's actually becoming very, very popular. I'm going to take it. I read about it this weekend, and then I've got the link to the test. It's free online, and it's very statistically driven. So we'll see how reliable and valid it is, and we'll talk about that on Wednesday when we talk about just the test reliability and validity. Okay. All right. So if you want to take that one, it would be fun. That'd be a good one to take. Now that's probably going to measure surface traits. I mean, most of those, and most of the ones that we have taken so far, except for probably the id, ego, superego, those are probably core. Those are core systems of your personality. But again, those then systems sprout out surface traits, right? Okay. So that's what trait theorists do. Now, the big name you need to know here is Gordon Allport. All right. He's considered the father of the trait theory. He's kind of the first ever researcher who designated his career to studying personality and ways to measure and identify it. Okay. Now, on page 613, there's a great reading in the book that you need to read. Gordon Allport actually got to meet Sigmund Freud. I think he was a graduate student, and he got an interview with Freud. So he got to go to his office and meet with him. And then there's a little section in your book on page 613 that actually shows kind of Allport's remembering of the interaction, which was very, very fascinating. So you need to read it. So he went to Freud to ask him about traits and not about where they come from, but does he believe that we need a more reliable system to measure it? And does he believe that there are core dimensions of our personality? And instead, what he got was basically a therapy session where Freud tried to access his unconscious mind, tried to psychoanalyze him. And through that interaction with Allport, you can see Freud's obsession with the unconscious mind, and obsession with trying to analyze it, discover it, measure it, that type of thing. So it's a very, very fascinating read. And if you read some of Gordon Allport's letters and writings, he will actually often refer to that interaction, which obviously would be of historical importance in your career in psychology. If you actually got to sit down and interview Sigmund Freud, that'd be pretty cool. So, okay. Now, what I also have down here is just some of the big, more recent tests in psychology. Go ahead and move it up here. So these are kind of some of the big names. So now we're kind of getting into course or AP learning target number 1 and 5, okay, a little bit. And again, we'll spend Wednesday just on those learning targets, and then also identify frequently used assessment strategies and evaluate relative test quality based on reliability and validity, okay? Which I think hopefully you should be able to answer number 5 just based on your critiques, but we'll go over that. Some of the big tests that are out here, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which again is the 16 type personality test. You could take one free online. If we were in class, I actually have one of the original certified short forms of the test. So I think the original test is like 170 questions. And I've got the 30 question short answer one. Okay. Now, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, this was the test, right? This was the test that you took. Now, it is amazingly accurate. Nobody questions the reliability of it, okay? It is accurate, and it is a valid test if you think that those 8 traits are core traits. Because again, remember, our trait theorists are concerned about these, and they're not even in agreement on what they are. They're in agreement in few. They're in agreement in extrovert, introvert, optimism, pessimism, and I think there's one other group that they're in agreement with, but the rest of them, they're not. And that's kind of what you get with Myers-Briggs. Extremely accurate, very reliable. And it is valid as a personality test. In other words, you're generally going to get, your personality is measured according to those core traits that they believe are the actual source traits. Now, what you have is you have some of the field that doesn't agree that they have all the core traits mentioned. So again, you get extrovert, introvert, everybody agrees. You get sensing and intuitive, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. Well, most of the psychology community doesn't believe in the judging, perceiving one. They've never really liked that one. And then they also believe that the other two could basically be aspects, dimensions of each other. So if I'm a sensor, I'm most likely a thinker. If I'm an intuitive, I'm most likely a feeler. Now, if you're in rare personality types, they're going to cross those over. But are they really just dimensions, surface traits of the same core trait? And what is that core trait? Okay, so this one is still very popular, and people take it. It's got a lot of free places you can take it online, and I believe it's very, very accurate. Okay, the Eysenck test, hope I pronounced that right, which we're going to take tomorrow, actually only has 2 core traits. It's extrovert, introvert, and then stable and unstable. Okay, so here is the polar opposite, which basically says that we only have 2. And we're all a dimension of the extrovert introvert, and we're all a dimension of the stable and unstable. Now, most people don't like that because there is a societal connotation with being unstable. So, nobody likes that. We'll see how it goes tomorrow with everybody. But that's on page 615 in your book, and it actually just shows this bullseye, and it's got like a target. It's got unstable, stable, introvert, extrovert, and then we're all on a one little like pie part of that chart, and then in there you have a whole bunch of surface traits that kind of label that piece of the pie that you are. Okay, the Big 5 personality factor, which is a great success story, is on page 618, and this is generally the one that most people use today. It's in most psych books, college psych books. This is kind of the big trait theory that most people belong to today. So if you know, it's the Big 5. So there are 5 core traits, and we all have a dimension of those. Okay, extrovert, introvert is in there. Okay, and those are on page 618 in the book, and the book does a very good job of kind of showing you the dimensions of each one. But you have the core traits, 5, and then you also have surface traits that are listed that kind of stem from those core traits. Now, great success story, because this was actually discovered by a group of college psychology students at California, Berkeley, and it was their capstone experimental psych project. They didn't believe that they wanted to try to create a more reliable and valid personality measure. Now, before you do that, you got to figure out what exactly are you going to try to measure, and what are your core traits. And that's what they came up with, is that for studying all these personality tests and doing factor analysis, they started to pool all the core traits that were more common in all of the tests and picked 5 of them, and then they developed their test. And then the test was bought. It was purchased from California, Berkeley professors, and those students are doing quite well now and have careers in research and so on and so forth. So it's a really good story. Now, the free one you can do online, which I think is one of the better ones, more reliable and valid forms of the Big 5 that's free, is the visual DNA test. And if you just Google visual DNA, it's based off the Big 5, and it will give you some. The MMPI, which is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, very good. It is used clinically quite a bit. Hopefully none of us will ever have to take it, because what it does do, what it is kind of an expert at, is identifying personality traits that lead to dysfunction or sickness or mental health or abnormal behavior. So it's very good at identifying the personality traits in us that might lead to psych disorders and so on and so forth. So it's mainly used as a diagnostic tool. Okay. And then you have, of course, the Enneagram, which Jada is presenting a video on, which hopefully I'll be able to show or link up on Thursday with her. Again, she's going to kind of share her expertise and knowledge about the Enneagram, which she is very good at. That's kind of the most popular one today. And again, I think there's nine types. So those would be your 9 core traits. And then from those core traits, depending on situations, you develop surface traits that stem off that, okay? The TAT, which we will take, the thematic apperception test, which is one of the most used clinical psychoanalytic or psychodynamic tests. And then the visual DNA. And then you've got the new one, the character match personality test, which you should take, I think, and I'll probably take that one for fun. And it'd just be cool because then you can kind of say, hey, I'm Black Widow or I'm the Hulk, or whatever, which is kind of cool. Okay. All right. So that's trait theory. Okay. So again, they just want to measure traits and describe it. Okay. And their job is they wanted to create the most reliable and valid personality test that they can. Now, in order to do that, you got to agree on what you're trying to measure and then have an inventory, a test that accurately measures that, which I don't know if we'll ever get to that in science. I don't know if we'll ever agree on what truly are universally the core traits. I think if we ever get that done, then a very reliable and valid measure could be created. The problem is just getting there, okay? So if you go back to your humanistic test that we just took, so the top 5 are the surface traits, okay? So those are the traits that basically just you display at school, at work. They can change on the situation. But these are actually probably the traits that most people are going to use to describe you because that's kind of just the language we speak, is we mostly describe in surface traits, okay? The middle 5 are actually your core or your source traits. So those would be the core of your personality, okay? Or dimensions of the core. And then the bottom 5 are your actualizing traits, the traits that you value in the future self as part of your self-concept that you haven't achieved yet, okay? So, like I said, that one is hit or miss big time. There's nothing in the middle. Now, again, with this one, does it measure source or surface traits? You're going to say both on this one. But if you go back and all your other ones, now you have the information, okay? You know the difference between the two, and you can kind of answer that question. Now, I would say probably most of them so far are surface traits, except for the id, ego, superego one, okay? Because those are considered core traits according to Freud's theory. And then each system stems off, okay? All right, so that is trait theory, and that is personality test number 5, okay? Any questions on anything? Any insightful questions or any questions, period? Okay. All right, I think we're good. Happy, rainy, cloudy Monday. Again, make sure you go back and look at all your grades for chapter 4 and make sure that I didn't make a mistake and not include something. So do that for me. If there is, just contact me, email me. And then I have first hour or the morning session, I have extended the deadline for chapter 15. So it goes all the way through Wednesday. So those are not due on Friday. They'll be due on Wednesday the 15th. So I've changed that in Canvas as well. But again, from here on out, it's going to be very simple because the journal critique isn't a part of that. So, you've got your, make sure you get everything in your AP notebook, a lot of names this chapter. So make sure you get that filled out, do your in-class vocab, your lab, and then take the quiz, okay? All right, and that'll be kind of it for the last three chapters, okay? And then after chapter 15, which we'll probably finish up on Monday, then we'll start having AP review sessions for you AP test takers. So we'll start in live stream, might be AP. But I've been looking over the AP stuff, and if you're going on College Board or 5-level, I don't think I need to dedicate a session every day to that. I think it's pretty clear what you're going to be taking, and we'll kind of talk about that. Okay, so the plan is tomorrow we're going to cover social cognitive theory of personality, and then on Wednesday we'll talk about the research part of it, questions 1 and 5, and then Thursday hopefully Jada will have her YouTube video to me, and I'll link that up, and then we can all take the Enneagram And then she's going to kind of go through the analysis. I think it's going to be about an hour and a half. So she's very vast knowledge on this. And then we'll answer AP Learning Chart number 4, which I'll have some special guests coming in. And we'll talk about culture, society, and how it impacts personality. Okay? All right. You guys have a good week, a good Monday, and I will see you soon.